Let's face it, failure is never a good thing, but failure at scale, that can be devastating. When digital platforms support revenue, serve massive audiences, or operate as mission-critical infrastructure, downtime and poor performance aren't minor issues. They're business-ending risks. My guest today built a company specifically to solve that problem. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur, the podcast where we explore the real, unfiltered stories behind starting and running a business. This is the show that looks past the highlight reels and digs into the uncertainty, the hard decisions, and the lessons that only come from experience. My guest today is Matt Dorman, a longtime technologist and the founder of Ndevr, a digital services company focused on building high-performance, scalable, and reliable web platforms for organizations that can't afford failure. Over the course of his career, Matt has worked at the intersection of technology, performance, and business, helping companies understand that speed, reliability, and user experience are not just technical considerations, but competitive advantages. In the first part of this conversation, we'll explore Matt's entrepreneurial journey, how a deep background in technology evolved into entrepreneurship, what surprised him most about running a business, and how his thinking changed as the company grew. In the second half of the show, we'll tap into Matt's expertise, talking about web performance, scalability, and why speed has become a core part of the user experience, and what founders and business leaders often misunderstand about the digital infrastructure that supports their business. If you're a founder, operator, or business owner, especially one whose company depends on digital systems to perform at scale, this episode offers practical insight, hard-earned lessons, and a grounded look at what it takes to build a business around reliability. My conversation with Matt Dorman begins right now. Stick around. Welcome, Matt. I'm so glad you're here today. So, Matt, first of all, I love your business name, Ndevr, because obviously most people probably, without looking at the logo, will spell Ndevr, E-N, how'd you come up with that business name?
Yeah, so I started the company with actually originally two other founders. We're now two founders in total, but we were going through a bunch of ideas. The three of us were very technology focused. We're developers, technical managers, like lead developers, things like that. So we wanted it to be tied into development. So, threw out tons and tons of words. And at some point, I think my current partner, she brought up Ndevr. It's like, well, the word, and she didn't spell it out. She just said Ndevr. It's like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then she saw it, or she spelled it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got dev in there. We're also technically based north of Denver.
So oh my God, you tied in everything to it. Yeah.
But the word Ndevr comes up all the time in conversations, and I didn't even realize it, of course, until you put it's like looking for white cars or something. Now you see all white cars.
Yeah,
now we hear the word Ndevr everywhere because everyone has an Ndevr. It's a hard thing to do, and you're really. It's a good experience when you come out of it, type of things.
Well, you were able to take a common English word and attach a number of Easter eggs to it, really. The only one that popped out to me, besides the unusual spelling, which I like, probably makes it easier to get a URL as well. I mean, spell out the English Ndevr.com. Yeah, you're going to spend a pretty penny on that one. What popped out to me was the dev, as in developer and development, and which is a very software-centric term. So, good job on that. How did your early exposure to technology and the internet in general shape the direction of your career?
Yeah, so I came up in high school right around the time when the public internet came out.
Yeah.
And people started to make money really when I was in college.
94, 96, and that
I graduated in 96 from high school, was in college right away. I was doing some web development in 96, and my background in college, I was going to be an electrical engineer. I thought be a great career, and I got work study doing basically supporting I think it was the physics department, putting up grades from Excel spreadsheets and putting them onto the website. So I wrote some Perl at that time, or CGI Perl, and that converted into web pages, and that was my first paid kind of web development in 1997, and continued to go from there, getting an internship that was going to be like clipping newspapers, and they were like, well, you can do web pages, right? And they were a website. It was nj.com. It was part of a newspaper and online media, right? And started building out advertising web pages for them, and continued literally from that day forward. That's all I've done my entire career, building out web pages.
People younger than us, certainly younger than me, and younger than you, are internet natives. They were born into the internet. First, almost like internet as a first language. Yeah. We are internet immigrants. We lived a good portion of our life before any online experience that could resemble the internet today. And, we had to learn all that. I learned, not the internet, but I learned how to code in the 70s in high school off a teletype machine. There were no CRTs then. There was a teletype machine modemed into the school district's mainframe computer. And so I learned to write in BASIC. I learned to write very simple software programs. I created what would now be considered a Mad Libs game, and enter a vowel, enter a color, enter a pronoun, enter an adjective, and and I would just do a bunch of if-then statements and print it out. But I think that coding in general is something that really should be taught right along with English and science and mathematics and things like that, because it prepped my brain to learn other things in the computer world beyond just coding. It taught me how to think. It taught me logic, because life and business are really not much more than if, then, else statements, right? And I think
being able to think in that type of logic.
Yeah, it really, really helped. I cringe. I've always been my company's webmaster. I don't know, is that even a term they use anymore? But back in the day, I was the webmaster. And the earliest website I designed for my company was in '96. And I think I wrote raw HTML code. I got it like a HTML for dummies or whatever the equivalent was back then, and hacked out something. And it was basically all text. I don't think there were any images to speak of on the original one. And then eventually I was so excited, I bought Microsoft Front Page, which was a software installed software platform that would basically help you build websites. It would write the HTML for you, and had kind of a graphic user interface and all of that. But it was very, very, very basic. And if I want to have a cringeworthy moment, I will go onto the Wayback Machine, as they call it, Internet Archives, and give it a date, give it my website, and I'll look at it and go, "Oh my God, we've come so far, Matt." I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh, definitely
in your world too.
But I've also seen it kind of go in a cycle, like it's a circle. The typical business cycle of websites. We're doing it at certain. In the early '90s, that's one thing, but then 2000s, like that cycle has kind of come around again a couple of times, where we got really big screens and sites had to be really big, and then all of a sudden we had mobile devices, and they were like everything needs to be, and then like user experience, and like people can't read more than 800 pixels wide, and like things like that actually gave us small sites again. And
now you can test with all the common website building platforms that are out there today, that you can test it on multiple browsers and mobile versus not mobile and all of that. At what point did building technology since you've been doing that for quite some time, turn into building a business? When did those two trains collide on the track?
The last company I worked for was a consulting company in New York, and that was kind of a transition period where I was working for a company, single as an employee, right, doing technology, building out big websites, and then moved into a consulting company where I was working for lots of companies and getting a lot of exposure and a lot of kind of experience doing just a project and then moving on, or maintenance and then moving on. And I worked for them for about 8 years and kind of got burned out in New York. I worked in New York for almost, I guess, 17 years or 18 years or something like that. Really got burned out on that and was going to go back to doing that, but only for myself and like freelance. And turned out a few other people that I worked with kind of wanted to do the same thing. And they were like, well, why don't, and then I started getting freelance work that was actually bigger than what I could do myself. So I brought them in, and that formed a company. So like when I saw the chance to come on your podcast, like I saw the reluctant entrepreneur. I mean, I did not try to like create a company and build a big or we're not a big company, but like try to build a company that wasn't a real goal. It was to get work.
You weren't a kid going, one day I want to be an entrepreneur, right?
No. I mean, my dad owned a business. It was a kind of an automotive type business and I just saw the struggles, and like it gave him freedom and things like that. And I saw that portion of it, but I felt like as a freelance web developer, I get all the freedom I want and don't have to deal with like staff and everything. So it just kind of grew, kind of organically or reluctantly, is a very good word for what happened initially. And now we're very much trying to build a real full-on business and grow it the way we're supposed to.
There's a huge difference between what people think entrepreneurship is like and what entrepreneurship is like, right?
Right.
You mentioned, you saw your dad doing that type of work. Did you have a belief in what entrepreneur was like, kind of slightly from the outside looking in compared to how you discovered it was really like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially going from a company where I thought like I was a leader in a leadership position, doing like I thought everything I needed to be doing for that company. And the reality of moving from like I was really good at my job and my role to moving into a company where I needed to be good at running a company and doing all these, or at least knowing what these other roles do, it's a very big step. Not one that I kind of envisioned. I thought it would just be easy. Like all those other things, I felt like, not that the people weren't smart, like I knew that they were really smart. I just didn't know that how much effort goes into knowing all the different pieces of running a company until we started doing it ourselves.
Yeah, I own a company. I started it 33 years ago and have amazingly managed not to kill it after all those years, despite my best efforts to inadvertently kill it. But I had a strong technical engineering type acumen, so I was able to design all the equipment that we still sell today. But I didn't know anything about business. But I figured, okay, you got to know two things. You got to know what it is, technically that you're doing. If you're an accountant, you got to know accounting. If you're a software guy, you need to know software. In my case, I had the technical stuff down. So I figured, okay, that's 90%, right? I got the hard stuff down. How hard can business be? I can just kind of figure it out on the go. I could not, Matt, I could not have been more wrong. You can learn the technical. It's really difficult to learn the business side of it. And, universities graduate a whole bunch of MBAs every year. And while they are educated, they may lack the real world, the real practical experience, the heartbeat of entrepreneurship and business and gut and intuition and all those things that are required that are really hard to quantify in an educational setting. I'm not putting down the educational setting. I wish I had more of it. But I think running a business really is almost a personality trait. I know people who are entrepreneurial that have never started a business, but they have the DNA for it if they chose to. I did not. So that was a huge surprise for me. Were there any other surprises for you when you started your business that you just didn't anticipate before?
Well, I think just market shifts and like how big like macroeconomics affects a small business. Because we're a web development company, right? So we deal with across the U.S. Local things actually can be one area in like if we're focused in one market, we focused in New York for a long time or LA and things like that. Like those local markets for hiring and firing people, let's say, like if people get laid off in a region, that actually had an effect on us because we didn't really think about it. Because when we started the company, we were remote, and that was before people even
Yeah.
thought about being remote. So we didn't really think about like how a region, if we were focused in that region as well, then how do we kind of adjust to that? That was one area. How like just random things can affect our company that aren't us, I guess. Like
Yeah.
it's happened a lot this last year, but that's like a bigger topic for
It's a whole
sure.
nother episode there.
Yeah,
I asked earlier about, or I mentioned earlier how the general perception from the outside of entrepreneurship is different than the reality of entrepreneurship. And I think one of those differences is I've had several people say, you're so lucky, among other things, you get to be your own boss. And like, really? I said, I report to my customers, I report to my vendors, I report to my team, I report to the economy, I report to technical shifts, as you mentioned. I
yeah,
report to the weather. I report to everything that's reported on the news somehow lands on my business, right? And yours too. And there is this fallacy that somehow, we show up when we want to, we take as much time off as we want to, which technically is can be true if there were actually time, that we could. We could choose to do it. We just choose not to because the business would fail. In the
yeah.
early,
The time off is a like with having a partner, a business partner. It's one of those things where we monitor each other's time off a lot. Where not in the like where like most people would think, right? It's more why haven't you taken any time off
yeah,
this year? Because you don't think about it yourself because it's a day to day. You know you need to be around, but the reality is, hopefully, the reality is that you can step away. You need to be taking the same time off that you're wanting your employees to take off. Let's say at least.
once a year for the last 25 years or so, my wife and I and friends go down to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. That's 2 hours by plane from where I live in California.
Mhm.
I like to say it's the farthest away anyone can get in 2 hours. And I when I come back after a week, my staff gets very irritated because I come back energized, full of all these crazy
Yeah.
ideas, some of which might be good, many of which are not. But I'm excited. And they're like, okay, here comes Mike. Mike's coming back on a Monday, plan all day in the conference room because Mike's just going to have all these things he wants to start. But there is something to be said about stepping back, gaining a little altitude,
Mhm.
looking down with perspective, looking over the horizon as far as possible, which really you can't do when you're in the thick of it, right? It's the forest from the trees scenario. And I think it is vitally important to have some time outside of the day to day and gain some perspective, whether it's a vacation or just a weekend away or a hike in the woods or whatever. It it's amazing how a few days away just recharges. It's like charging a car. It's a supercharger, right? It's extremely helpful for mental health, for clarity, for perspective, and it really lands as a great ROI on the business. There's a reason why business trips are frequently and conferences are frequently in places that
That's
give you that because
right.
it definitely pays back. Was there a moment when you realized you needed to change how your business operated in order to grow substantially or sustainably?
Yeah, yeah. Early. I mean, again, I mentioned that we thought the three of us came in, and now the two of us came in kind of really thinking that we had a good idea of how this industry works, how we need to be able to grow and focus on the customer, and just doing the right thing over and over would create some kind of growth. And again, none of us really had a marketing background, or I had somewhat sales because I did sales engineering essentially. So getting the deals closed, but actually creating demand for what we do had been a struggle early on, and honestly even to today, because we haven't identified exactly how we get like real new business outside of our network, outside of the referrals, kind of a kind of a wider network type thing, right? So that side of things has been a struggle for us, as even as two kind of almost, I mean, we overlap quite a bit, but we have very different skill sets around those types of things, but we haven't been able to kind of figure out that area, for explaining to people not just what we do, but explaining how they have a problem that we can address, in an easy way, I think.
I've interviewed several entrepreneurs, and no one has come back and told me how easy it was, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a story being told, at least by anyone I've talked to. I'm sure there's some unicorns out there that are just...
Watch YouTubes and
Oh,
like,
yes, yes. Well, that usually involves sending them money.
right.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to start a business, send me money, and I'll tell you how. Look how successful I am. One of the things I just find cringeworthy. I don't know. Maybe it's jealousy that I'm not aware of, or envy or something. But I just can't stand the success videos that basically have an B-roll of the guy pulling up in his Bentley to the foot of the private jet. His G6 and mansions and all this stuff. Well, what are you selling? Or you're selling this perception of a lifestyle. And I personally know someone who used to be a neighbor of mine that's in that space now. And I don't think he would know me, but I remember when he lived down the street from me. And, it could be everything I'm seeing is just through a lens of envy or whatever, but I just think the delivery of that, success is what they're selling is
the goal.
Fake. It's the goal. Yeah, exactly. And I found, and I've said this on this show several times, when I chase a very specific business metric, I need cash. I have payroll next Thursday. I need to generate cash. I will generate cash, not profit. But that's not today's problem. If I focus on one thing, I accomplish that at the expense of 5 other things. And to me, at least my Pollyannish simple way of looking at it, success is making good decisions across the board. Then the company will be successful in its own authentic way, in its own organic time. Right. If you force one issue, you're pushing against something else, right? Our arms aren't wide enough to push everything at the same time, right? You can't. So I've said this on the show many times, so for my regular audience, forgive the repetition here, but I used to fly airplanes. I'm a licensed pilot. And during my training, and during every pilot's training, there's 3 things that the flight instructor drills into you. Anytime you're sitting behind those instruments, anytime you're in the cockpit, you have to do 3 things simultaneously: aviate, navigate, and communicate, right? You can't stop one. If there's an emergency, you still have to do all 3. And I think there is a business equivalent to that rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. And when we push one, it's at the expense of something else. Only in the world of aviation, that expense might be hitting a mountain you didn't see because you were looking down at the instrument cluster, whatever the case may be. As I mentioned, I've not talked to anyone who says it's easy. How do you handle, just in general, difficult moments? Where does that perseverance come from? What makes you not say, I'm out. Mm-hmm. It's beat me up. It wins. How do you keep going?
Yeah, I mean, well, part of it is having a good business partner, kind of hopefully not facing the exact same things. I mean, we've faced trials and tribulations, however you want to call it. Like I mentioned or alluded to, this last year, 2025 was a really hard year for our industry. And in general, prior to that last year, I would say it was always my experience that kept me through, because I knew like hard projects, clients getting upset, whatever, we're doing the right things, or that we would be able to get through it because of the experience of doing it before. Being able to get new clients, well, we've always done it before. There's always new markets out there to address. And the reality is that, I mean, not to get too deep into it, but I have I have faith in that things are, out of my control. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe in that more than anything, honestly. And this last year, again, we're very much out of control because economy, the AI industry has kind of taken over software development in a big way. It's starting a big pendulum back finally, in our industry at least. So knowing I didn't have like the experience of getting through what we were going through last year because it was so new, but I still felt like there was still things out there that were going to be, because we're doing the right things for our customers, the right things in the industry. We're not, burning bridges and things like that. Eventually, things are going to turn around the economy, and then people are going to want to work with people like us again, and that's happening already. And that's a really good thing. Same thing with like running the numbers, like looking at the numbers. Like if I only look at the numbers, I saw a clear path to me needing to get a job, basically. But if I look around and look at the things out there, or just kind of ask questions to other agency owners, I kind of got a glimpse of there were things that were kind of positive, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Your work focuses on performance, reliability, and scale. Those are the kind of the keywords I
Sure.
got out of researching your company. Why do those things matter so much to businesses today?
I think for what we do, so we help people like their forward-facing websites, their forward-facing platforms on social media and things like that. So those areas, performance, scalability, those are initial, like that's the first thing people see, right? So if you're going to your website, the first thing that they see is a blank page and it takes X seconds to load, or things are moving around, or they don't look appropriate because they're either broken or just not loading in properly. Those are first impressions that make a lasting impact. So what we try to do is get those things to that, at least that impact is as perfect as possible, because it doesn't take a whole lot to really turn someone to go somewhere else, unless you're in Amazon, maybe like Walmart now, like for if you're buying things. So if you're not a big player, people aren't going to just come back to you just because you have some kind of brand loyalty, because you don't yet. So
Yeah,
that first
I agree.
impression, yeah.
I am super judgy when it comes to
Mhm.
websites. That's just me.
Yep.
I've I always wanted to be in the creative space, and it
Right.
just took a path into the technical creative space, right? But I'm a when I fly a lot. In fact, I just got off an airplane from Scotland last night. I'm on airplanes a lot, and before I could bring a tablet on, right, and stream content, I would go to the airport store and buy a bunch of magazines, maybe a car and driver, maybe a
Hmm.
scientific thing or modern science, whatever it's called, and Newsweek and U.S. News and World Report, and the first thing I do is read every ad before I read any content. I would read the ads and I would look at the quality of the ads. I was just really into that, and then I get bored and have to actually read the content, But
Yeah.
when I see a website that is slow, or images pop up with the question mark or an X, which means it wasn't loaded properly, or something to that effect, or text scrolling off the screen, just common
Yeah.
bonehead mistakes that amateurs make. I cast aspersions on the company. I make all these assumptions, which may be completely untrue, but I will, if I'm looking to buy something, I will just go to the next website. And
Right.
and I also look
because every decision after that point is based on that, and then every time they mess up a little more,
Yeah.
if the price isn't right, then I'm
Yeah.
completely
And I'm
gonna look
looking
for it.
at it like, okay, they're seeing probably, I'm a Mac guy, so I'm on a Safari browser, or sometimes I'll load Chrome. And if I'm seeing it across a couple of browsers, so are they, and if that's good enough for them, what's the quality of their product like? What's the reliability? What's the quality? What's the service like? How much do they really care? That's what goes through my head. It's like, how can that even happen today? How do you explain the importance of speed and reliability and all of that to non-technical business leaders that may not be as anal as I am and judgy when they see something? They might just go, "It's good enough."
I think that's the thing that they think. So they think their own website is good enough, but they make the same assumptions. They make the same kind of judgy opinions about other websites. I think
Right.
people don't realize how they're affected until you actually have a conversation about that, right? Because like if they're there are two things, like that's just they're assuming that their website's fine because they're looking at it maybe 5 times a day, maybe 100 times a day, and everything is, and this is getting a little technical, but everything's cached, everything's like exactly, and they're also focusing on the things that they're trying to change, right? So they no longer look at the hero image that it took forever to load because they strolled right down to the area that they're going to make a change to, and that's like getting them to kind of step back and just take a look at your website. Take 5 seconds. Really, that's all it takes, and open it up in a new browser if you have the ability to clear your cache and everything like that, right? And what are you thinking? Like, what went through your mind, right? Like, did you get distracted because you want, like, your 5 seconds was too long, right? You went and tried to do something else and you didn't even see what the hero is, or you scrolled past because that hero slider took too long and the important things were down on the bottom of the page. So why do you
Yeah.
have that thing? So having those conversations, but that's a personal kind of, that's a hard thing for, again, I got back getting kind of going in a circle, but getting back to like trying to figure out how we can tell the people, our ICP, what problems they have. Until we can have that conversation, they don't really understand that they do have a problem. And we've put out videos and trying to get it out, but they're not looking for that information really. But until
Yeah.
you have that conversation with them directly, and again, it only takes 5 seconds. Look at your website. It
Yeah.
could be
Once you point it
broken.
out, they probably cannot not see it
You
at
can't
that
get
point,
it. Yeah,
right?
you can't get it out of your mind. I mean, we actually, not to pitch our podcast at all because it's not a serious podcast. It's called Boozy Browsing. So we started
I
it
love the
this
name.
past year. You can imagine what it is, right? We
Yeah.
have a drink and we go and look at websites. And I did not realize when we started it, I just thought we were going to critique like old websites,
Yeah.
but we're going to brand new, high brand, like big brand websites and finding things every single time, like security issues, like security kind of things that are flagging areas. We went to one. We actually were recording yesterday, and I had issues with my eyes, so my eyes were dilated. So like, we'll just have a funny one, like a quick 10-minute video, and so the first one we show up, it's got a security issue where it's saying there's no SSL cert,
Right.
and this is a major brand.
And then
Like
you have
they
to
do,
go there where you have to basically tell your browser,
yeah,
"I'm
yeah.
ready to get
I had
screwed
to
over."
accept.
Right. You
I
have to
figured it.
trust anyway.
Yep, I had to trust anyway, and I knew exactly, like, somehow they let it expire. That's a major issue.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
for a site that big. And but then you go on other sites and like the hero didn't load, and I was like, what's going on today? But that for when we look at websites, it's almost 50% of the websites we look at have broken stuff, and these are big brands. So
Yeah. I think a lot of these big brands contract out that stuff, and because I know a few developers that do that. Similar. I don't want to say similar to what you do because you have a niche within that space. But I don't know. They pay them a ton of money for a one-time project, and I'm not sure any one person owns it. So
yeah,
it's too many chefs in that kitchen. One of the things I found fascinating, and I'm sure you're familiar with this type of app. I wanted to understand better how people viewed our website and how they navigated the website and how much
yeah,
time they spent on each page. So installed a kind of in the background program called Hotjar, and I think there's several others. And what it basically is a fly on the wall. It's a little creepy because you're kind of a voyeur, right? But it basically creates a video of tracking the mouse movement.
Right.
It's totally anonymous, so I don't know who's there. I don't care who's there. But I get to follow their mouse movement and clicks. And it's funny. Humans tend to put the mouse where their eyes are. If they're reading, they're scanning. Exactly. It's just, almost like Braille. Your hand's going across the screen. In this case, the mouse is going across the screen. And as their eyes are looking around whatever view they have, the mouse tracks pretty much their eyes. Right. And it's a great insight into how people are navigating. They click on a link and then they instantly click back, which tells me that's not where they meant to go. Why did they go there? Is it something I'm saying? Is it, just little things like that. How long did they spend on each page? How many times did they read the paragraph? I can see when they scroll down, whatever. So, am I saying too much? Do I really want to have that a drill down, so I don't overwhelm people on, the first page they click on? It's like 20 feet long, It was a great experience to see how others navigate my site. It did result in some changes. I think the perception, because you can host a website for $10 a month, right? And
a year.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the perception is it's so cheap. Let's just throw everything on it, right? And I'm a big believer in the less is more philosophy, right? Just leave them wanting more. There's got to be if you answer every single question,
it's going to get lost.
It's going to get lost, and they're not going to need you. And maybe there's a misconception, a misperception, or maybe you didn't communicate something right, and they just inadvertently ruled you out, right? So there's got to be I'm not talking about a traditional marketing CTA, call to action, whatever, but it's got to be an experience that was very satisfying, but not overly so that, no, I know everything there is to know. You just taught me everything, right? They have to need you. I mean, the website is an extension of you, of your business, and your business is an extension of you, and somehow you need to be part of that.
Right.
What do companies most often misunderstand about their digital infrastructure? What are the biggest mistakes people make or misperceptions they have?
I think depending on the level they are within the company, let's say, so there are some companies that are small enough that the person running the website, the whole digital infrastructure is one person, and that's one thing where they kind of have a good idea of all the tools. Most of the time, people don't understand what the other person in the other department is doing, and that they're putting out information on their website, but then their social media platform is looking a little bit different, or and then their advertising is saying it's totally different messaging and pitching something totally different. And they don't understand that people actually see all three or all four, whatever the number is. And they don't really get an idea or an understanding that this messaging and this kind of the approach has to be done at the same time and all kind of going to the same sources. And if you're going to different places, it's going to be jarring to that person because they're seeing a different branding maybe or a different message depending on where they're going. And they don't really understand it because they're focused on just the website or just their, TikTok or X or something, or their ads, right? And they're not seeing the whole thing altogether as a user will. Because again, so this is a technology thing. But once you go to a website, you now see that website's ads. You now see probably you're getting bubbled up on YouTube or wherever else you are. They're going to be getting focused onto it. And if you're sending this different things to that same person, they're going to start questioning it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Today, there are so many self-service options. Build your own website. I'm thinking of Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, and so many others. What are the values of these types of kind of self-serve design platforms, and what are their limitations?
Yeah, there's a lot of value. For most, if you're starting a business, that's how you should do it, right? That's because you need to get your messaging. But like the thing I just talked about, make sure that you as an owner or you as an entrepreneur are making sure that messaging is the same throughout. But those tools are across all platforms really useful. Getting a website up, getting blog posts, things like that, even posting to social media. There's even platforms that'll do all of it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that initial, there's no like, oh, once you get to this level, then you have to move on to something like using a team like ours or other teams or even a developer. But at some point, you're going to come across things that you want to integrate with, you want to pull in. Maybe it's now AI tools that you need to create content for, and you don't want to do all the steps manually anymore because you don't have the time. Well, there are people out there that can help build those connections together. And doesn't mean that Shopify, Wix, Square, like those things can't be still used. They absolutely can. It's just that you might need someone else to put all the pieces together and connect them. But again, it's not that you can't do it. Also, an individual can still do all the things. It just takes a lot more time to go all the different places and do all the things. And then you're messing up like copying and pasting, and, copy gets weird then versus a system that does it for you.
Do those types of systems that we talked about, are they good at scale? So can an Amazon scaled size company get away with a WordPress site, or do they crash after a certain amount of traffic?
Well, so we do. So for a lot of years and still today, we focus on really high, big traffic WordPress sites. So it's not I know a lot of people would like to throw out, WordPress is a thing you start with and then you build on something else. But honestly, you could build it.
Okay, so it is scalable.
It is the things that are not scalable so WordPress is specifically scalable because you have a lot of ownership around it. Now, when you talk about Shopify, the platform itself scales beyond or up to what even an Amazon could push at it potentially, because they'll just put more money into it. But the feature set, you're not going to be able to build outside of their feature set. So the scaling is really the features that you want to be putting on these SaaS platforms or platforms that are fully hosted, fully managed. So that would be Shopify, Wix, Squarespace.
And a lot of those, I don't know those specifically, but a lot of those end up on an AWS server anyway, right? So
I guess the background is.
Yeah. So they're all running on Amazon Web Services. Amazon's in there somewhere.
When there's, especially in IT, we know when Amazon goes down, Netflix goes away, and all the things dependent on it. It gets really bad when actually Amazon itself, like Amazon.com, goes down, and then they're going to fix it pretty fast. But even the last one, it took them a while.
Yeah, well, they're still selling stuff online, right? So it's the second priority.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about AI, and there's a lot of hype with AI, just like there was a lot of hype with the internet. You and I have been around long enough to see several hype cycles, right? And then the pendulum usually swings a little bit back towards center. Things are overpromised or overexpected, and then it kind of comes back to the middle. I think AI is definitely one of the biggest evolutions in my lifetime, probably bigger than the internet itself, because of its potential impact in so many parts of our daily lives. But I have a lot of friends and family who are very intimidated by it. They think it's bad. I have a couple friends who even think it's evil, and there are some misconceptions about its potential, both good and bad. And there's probably a little bit of truth in all of that, but generally over-applied on each side. I am a fan of it. I use AI all the time to research my guests. So I can either Google you and your company and then click on 12 links or 100 links and dig through the information, or I can have it do it for me and give me a snapshot, a bullet point, and learn more about it. And I've even had it, I had a few years ago, probably 2 years ago, I wanted a specific thing on my website that I saw on another website, and I didn't know how to write the code for it, and it wasn't like a Squarespace widget, so I just went on AI and described what I wanted, gave it a link to where I saw it, and I can't remember if it wrote it in Flash or if it wrote it in HTML5 or Java. Well, I forget how it wrote it, but it wrote the code, and I uploaded the code, and boom, right? Now that's just one little graphic thing, but I know AI can be used to write code, and that code can be used to develop websites. But how much of that is a productivity tool for you, and how much of that is a threat for you?
Yeah, it's definitely both. So it's a huge productivity tool when we're using it alongside developers and alongside teams. We started using it. People were using it 4 or 5 years ago, so they were way advanced. But a year and a half or so ago, we started using it alongside our team as kind of an assistant to not writing code for us, but monitoring, reviewing code, and kind of type ahead type things. And it was getting really good at it. And then the concept of, they call it vibe coding. It's really taking it, like you said, like I can put an idea into a prompt, and it will come up with a somewhat fully functional kind of product, or maybe it's a widget or things like that.
And then you modify it and shape it, right?
Yeah, and it does a really good job at all of that, and that's where I think that the bubble-ish thing, because everyone thought, well, that can do everything now, and we don't need software development, or we don't need technical people anymore to build the things because AI is doing all the things. And I'm not going to, obviously I have a vested interest in that not being the case.
Right,
kind
of course.
But there's a reality that's kind of come around now, where we've realized that it's only learning from itself, and it's only building off of what it kind of internet has told it are good. So
sure.
Substack and things that are out there that used to take a person looking at something as an example and then changing it, it just takes it and spits it out. So it's just constantly spitting out what looks like very functional code or functional products, but the underlying things get more and more security issues, or just functional brokenness, essentially bloat, which creates brokenness. And that's there's a threat somewhat that came, and it's not gone, because people can still build things really quickly. But I think people are starting to use it as a tool more, and now getting for iterations beyond that, they need real technical people to build it.
Right. And AI works off prompt. It's all prompt based. So you write the wrong prompt, you get the wrong answer, and it's sometimes literally the wrong answer. And
I would say that even with the correct prompt, you get the wrong. We've used it enough, and I've played with it enough that the longer you kind of trying to create a product, let's say you're trying to create a product, and it's you're adding and adding and adding. So every prompt you add, it seems to have a different idea of how you wanted it done, and the things that you've already decided on don't matter to it. It's now doing it a different way, and unless you're constantly monitoring the whole thing you've built, it's constantly changing the product.
Yes, yeah, I've noticed that. Part of that is handy. It has learned the way I format the show. It has learned the types of questions I want to ask. It's learned a number of things, and one of the things I had to train it was I only want fact-based information. I don't want hypotheses, right? Because sometimes I'll read something and I'm like, I didn't know that about Matt. And then I'll ask it, is this based on fact? If so, provide the citations. And then it will say, well, no, based on the theme of your show, being reluctant entrepreneur, Matt was afraid to start a business, which no part of you ever said that, right? So
Sure.
It now knows that everything I ask it for comes with citations, so I can verify it and make sure nothing was taken out of context and nothing was assumed or presumed to be the case. Because it will, it's like a Hollywood screenwriter. It will write a screenplay for you, which is partially biographic and partially fiction. And
Yeah.
So I think the idea that AI is just going to take over everything, particularly your world and my world,
Right.
I think it'll be into everything, but it's still going to require a Matt Dorman and group of people like that know how to ride the AI train, know how to handle it, know how to train it, and it'll be unique to your use. And your competitor will have another way of prompting it that's unique to them. And so yeah, it's a threat and it's an opportunity all in one. That's the way I look
But
at it.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that idea of like, I was going to get back to it. Like it's a good note to put for other entrepreneurs. There's a feature in there that you can actually tell it to not hallucinate.
Yeah.
I don't remember it's in your settings, and I didn't know this until a few months back. Because I played, like, I use the LLMs for certain things, and I use other coding AI agents that are for different things, right? But the LLMs, I figured, I was just kind of playing ideas and things like that. But it would always hallucinate with things, the longer discussions. But I put this in my settings, and then it just stopped guessing. It stopped making stuff up. Finally,
Yeah. I have to figure out what that setting is. I've complained about it. I've corrected it so many times. It now doesn't do that. Well, actually, that's not true. Maybe after about 20 different prompts, it might introduce a hallucination again, and I'll have to remind it. And it will, of course, thank me for reminding it. And oh, you're absolutely correct.
I'm so
Thanks for.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah. They put this little empathy thing in there to keep people coming back. Make a great question, Mike. That type of
You're
stuff. Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah, they do. I listened to some expert on the subject, and it was actually a horrible subject. It was about some family that's suing OpenAI because
Yes,
their
I know.
child was prompted to commit suicide or something
Yep.
to that effect.
Yep.
And hearing some of the transcripts, I'm like, why would it say that? But the person explained it's a machine. It doesn't care. It's but it is trained in its basic core to get you to come back and to provide compliments and to be friendly and kind of puff you up a little bit. That's in its basic model. So
Yeah,
you
any of
know
your concerns or the way that you're thinking, it's going to grow that.
it's going exactly. It's got its own algorithm that
Yeah.
latches onto you, and when you take someone that may be in other ways troubled, and they see a quote unquote friend, it it can express as much empathy as the best friend you can possibly have, right?
Right.
But of course, the best friend you can possibly have would not tell you your ideas are pretty cool, when you're thinking of self-destructive behavior. So,
No.
Matt, we're almost out of time. So, a couple more questions. Looking back, what advice would you give founders who are building businesses that rely heavily on digital systems?
I think to get some advice, you don't have to get paid advice, but finding there are a lot of places where you can get like cohorts of information, and finding people that actually are doing this for a living is really important. I mean, you can find it online, but like we were kind of discussing with AI, you're going to find the things that people are wanting to tell you. So they're, it's not specific to your case, let's say. But if you have conversations with people, I think in our industry, people are very willing to give essentially what's called free advice, right? It's conversations. I'm
Mm-hmm.
building relationships long term, so go out and ask people. You will get a lot of information to help you start without having to pay for certain things. Now, you get further along, and you're going to have to pay for certain things, but that's when it's specific industry advice and not just general, like
Yeah,
how to build things type of thing.
excellent. And when how did you define success when you first started your company, and how do you define it today?
I think, well, so I definitely wanted an income that allowed me to focus on my family and focus on friends and things like that, and a flexibility to do it. I think that success metric has served me well. I think I would like to continue kind of that that type of focus, because I think focusing on all those things, kind of balancing both family time and having to focus on a company when I need to create the financial kind of freedom to be able to do that is really important to me as a kind of an owner, because it also makes me know that I need to help my team do the same thing, where yes, we need to make money and they need to spend a certain amount of time, but they're doing it for a reason. And hopefully that reason is what I'm trying to do as well, because that then makes them better people.
Great answer. And this is episode number 50, and the 49 episodes I've done prior to talking with you today, I've never had an entrepreneur answer, nothing's changed. It always starts with some monetary, a view of success. I've never had anyone say, how did you define success when you first started? Money. How do you define it today? Money. It's usually something a little higher level, a little higher octave, and that's great. What's the name of that podcast you do, kind of for fun, where you drink and go off on websites?
It's called Boozy Browsing.
Boozy Browsing.
You definitely have to watch it on YouTube because the visuals are key for that type of content.
Yeah, Boozy Browsing. So for my audience who would like to get more information on Ndevr and Boozy Browsing, if you're watching this on YouTube, just look down here and where it says see more, and that information, the URLs will be there. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, just look at your show notes on your podcast app and that information will be there as well. Matt Dorman, Ndevr, thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your journey and expertise with me and my audience. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed every bit of our conversation.
Yeah, thanks again, Mike. This was great.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A special thanks to Matt Dorman for being my guest on the show. We have been exceptionally busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And one personal favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, consider giving us a like and subscribe. Those two simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. You can also reach me directly at mike@reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com. And a very quick shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again so much for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable.